Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone to Career Conversations. It's a University of Rochester webinar series developed to help you leverage your existing talents and pursue new ideas. My name is Michelle Cavalcani and I work in alumni relations, identifying and developing professional development resources and programs. I'm really grateful to have Jody Smith back with us from the class of 1990. She will be presenting today's webinar as part of a dual program to provide an overview of what mentorship is and is not, explain the importance of unbiased feedback, and offer some tips and tricks to ensure successful mentoring relationships that are beneficial to the professional development of both parties, and that being the mentee and the mentor. So yesterday we talked about the role of the mentee, but today Jody is going to be presenting on how to mentor in the modern world. And I know she has a lot of great information to share with everyone, and we encourage you to ask your questions using the Q&A box. Some of you were with us yesterday, and I'm happy to see you back for more. And before we get into the presentation, maybe Jody, you can give us a little bit of background on your experience with mentorship. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back again today. My background is actually in human resources. And as part of major corporations and organizations, I put together mentoring mentee programs, implemented them, checked them, surveyed people, find out what was working, found out what wasn't working, changed them, edited them, updated them, so that people really could get the most out of these mentoring relationships, both for the mentees as well as for the mentors.
That sounds great. Well, we look forward to hearing some more about what mentorship is and what the role of the mentor is. So take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. So this is our Career Conversations, what it means to be a mentor in the modern world. There are just some basic administrative things. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. I will be presenting for about 30-35 minutes, and then I'll be doing questions and answers. For those of you who are able to stay through that, that's wonderful. Those of you who aren't able to stay as long, I do have my website and email on the final slide, and you can feel free to send me questions. I've already received a number of questions directly from people who attended the program yesterday. You should be able to hear me okay. If for any reason, if something happens, feel free to log out and log back in. Hopefully we'll be able to keep you the entire time. For any meeting that I have, I'd like to have what's known as a PAL, a purpose, an agenda, and a time limit. Our purpose here today is to talk about how to be the best mentor possible. And I hope to share with you some tips and tricks on how to be a great mentor. If all goes well, again, I am speaking for about 30-35 minutes, and then we will have the rest of the hour to answer any questions that we have from the audience. As Michelle alluded to, I am an alumna from the University of Rochester. Those of you who were paying careful attention yesterday would have noticed that I was wearing blue and yellow in tribute to our school colors. I am keeping with that theme again today with the blue and gold, and you can probably see in the background I have my little Rush Reeves picture as well. I do have a master's in human resources from Cornell. I've worked in human resources, I've created these programs, I've implemented the programs, I've surveyed, I've fixed programs. So I'm hoping to be able to share with you some of those high-level tips to make this relationship as positive and as productive as possible. Those of you who attended yesterday, I'm thrilled to have you back again today. You will notice that a few of the slides at the beginning of the presentation are basically the same. And the reason for that is because the mentor-mentee relationship is co-joined. And I like to make sure that everybody is on the same page. So those of you who heard this part yesterday, you can take a little bit of a breather. Those of you who are fresh with us today, I'm thrilled that you're here. Don't worry, you did not miss a whole lot. We will bring everybody up to speed. You are never too old or too young for a mentor. Everyone can learn something new. And I am really a big proponent of you are never done learning. From people who are more established in their careers, there are so many things that we can learn from people who are digital natives, about the way that they look at the world, about the way they communicate with the world. And then of course, people who are young alumni or even undergraduates still, there are of course things that people who've been out in the working world longer can share with you. So there's always an opportunity to learn something new. And I encourage people, as you are looking at your career, you should both be at the same time, simultaneously, a mentor to someone as well as a mentee with someone else. So I do hope that as you're listening to this program, as you're getting involved with the University of Rochester and the Meliora Collective, that you are looking at this from both sides. The word mentor comes from our mythical past. In Greek mythology, mentor was actually a friend of Odysseus. When Odysseus left for the Trojan Wars, he left mentor in charge of his son and of the palace. The idea was that mentor was the person that was going to raise his son, to share with him all the knowledge that he would need to become an adult. Nowadays, we presume that people are already adults in our mentor-mentee relationship, and that we're sharing with them knowledge, skills, and experiences that they can learn from. The whole idea is to be able to learn from someone else and make sure that we are sharing that information. So what's the benefit of having a mentor? And of course, as mentors, you should be thinking about what are the benefits, what are the advantages I'm able to share with my mentee, is obviously connections. If you've been out in the work world for a while, if you've been established in your career, you should have connections that you are able to help to facilitate for someone who is an entry point in their career. Of course, you have insider information. I think about my role as HR, and I spend a lot of time doing informational interviews. And informational interviews are sort of the baseline, sort of a pre-mentoring relationship. A lot of times the informational interview ends at the end of the interview. Occasionally the informational interview turns into a mentor relationship. But when I'm talking to undergraduates who tell me that they want to work in HR, they like the idea of human resources, they want to know more about it, they have no idea that human resources is actually made up of 5 separate disciplines. And so I spend a lot of time explaining to them, you hear the word human resources and people think it's one big pocket, but it's actually 5 separate career points. And that's something that they won't know unless they talk to somebody who's been in the field for a little while. Obviously, the mentor relationship can lead to leads. Interestingly, the leads doesn't necessarily mean that I'm opening up my contact database and giving those to the mentee. What it can mean is that I'm able to use my perspective and my experience to share with the mentee where they can then look for appropriate leads. Obviously, a mentor-mentee relationship is a lower stress. I'm not hiring this person. This is not a job interview. They are not being graded for a class, which means that we're really able to give some serious feedback. One of the places that we can give feedback on is if they are about to enter the workforce, or if they're in the process of doing a career change in the middle of their career, to be able to give them some open and honest feedback about their resume. And then of course, mentoring really is about guidance and coaching. The same way that human resources, I didn't choose the 5 number on purpose to echo this way, but the same way human resources has 5 different divisions within the overall organization, there are actually 5 different ways that you can mentor. And the advantage to this is that once you identify which part of the mentoring relationship you're going to fall into, that helps you to be able to determine what information to share. So you might be teaching them something new. You could be providing them just general advice and guidance. You can be providing them specific advice and guidance. You can offer your perspective, and then you can assist with networking. So in my career, I have a variety of mentors that I use at different points in time, depending on what happens to be going on. So for example, I have a mentor who I've had for now 24.5 years, which has been wonderful. She knows my entire career. She understands my business. She's able to give me some really interesting information because she is so connected with what I'm doing and has a really good understanding of where I am. Then there are other people that I consult with just for one-off things. So for example, during the course of my business, I have rented office space, and then I've worked out of the house, and then I've rented office space and I've worked out of the house. And there's a mentor that I go to specifically with questions like that. And they're able to, in maybe 40 minutes, sit down and say, okay, so what are the reasons? Why would you want to rent the office space? What does the lease look like? How long do you have to stay there? Who else is in the building? What is the commute? And by the time I'm ending that conversation, that particular mentor has asked me all of the right questions that by the time we finish talking, I know what I want to do. I do not talk to them on a regular basis. I only talk to them when I'm at a specific kind of decision point. So think about what type of mentor you want to be and where you can offer your expertise. I find that mentors, when I talk to people about being mentors, almost always the first thing that they say is, I don't have time. I don't have time to be a mentor. And then I start talking about, well, there's different ways to be mentors. You don't have to be a mentor where you're meeting with somebody for 2 hours every week and giving them performance feedback. There are times that you're just lightly touching base, maybe once a month. So think about what it is that you want and what you're able to give, and then be able to choose that mentoring relationship appropriately. So along with the previous slide, I also like people to be able to think about their mentor options. I already mentioned you can have ongoing mentors, you can have one-time mentors. Obviously right now, we're not doing a whole lot of in-person mentors because of the pandemic, but the pandemic, like everything else, this too shall pass, and ultimately we'll be able to have in-person meetings again. When I first started writing about mentors many, many years ago, I had up the bullet point to be a virtual mentor. And at the time when I wrote this, one of my virtual mentors was Oprah. And by virtual at that point, I meant somebody that you have watched, who you've listened to, books of theirs that you've read, if they've written any white papers, if they have a website on how they like to live their life. And so when I had certain problems, I would think, well, what would Oprah do? I didn't actually get to call Oprah. I never emailed her. I've never met her. But in my mind, I was able to get feedback because of who she was and how she behaved. Nowadays, virtual actually means virtual, like this. We can have mentors really well beyond, as devastating as the pandemic has been on so many different levels. It really has some major silver linings. And one of the silver linings is that people generally think of mentors as being people that are co-located, that are geographically either where they are, or maybe if it happens to be a student, they're on campus, but their mentor is in their hometown. But with people staying safe at home and more people having access to virtual communications, we really can have mentors from literally anywhere on the planet. So I encourage you to think about when you have time and when you're going to be able to connect with people, and to be able to reach beyond what we would initially think as being a perfect mentee, because we have the opportunity to connect with people virtually. I didn't talk about this a lot yesterday, so I will spend a little bit more time talking about it today, which is with mentors, one of the great things that you can do is role play. So if somebody is up for a big promotion, or somebody is ready to give a pitch, the mentoring is, again, that low stress, a low stress dry run, a dress rehearsal, to be able to give somebody feedback before they go in to something that is going to be a high stress interaction, whether that's buying a new car or giving a presentation or going in for a job interview. This is an opportunity through the mentoring relationship to be able to role play. So there is somebody in my cadre of mentors who I only talk to when I really need somebody to be a harsh role player. And this person loves to play the devil's advocate. They are a true curmudgeon contrarian. And so I know that if I can give that presentation, or I can do the sales pitch with this person and manage to answer all of their questions, that interaction, when I really have it, will be a piece of cake. So think about what your strengths are as a person, think about what your strengths are as a professional, and then choose how you're going to be able to share that information with someone else. It does not have to be that every single week encounter. So when people talk about a mentoring relationship and the initial impression is, no, I don't have the time, think about it more creatively. There are plenty of ways that you can really effectively and efficiently mentor people without having it be a huge time commitment. The dance. Mentoring relationships are like dances. Somebody's leading and someone's following. If you prefer a car analogy, there's somebody driving the car and there's somebody who's a passenger, but there's only one person in charge. And in the mentor-mentee relationship, people usually think about the mentor, the person who's more experienced, as being the person who's in charge of the relationship. And it's actually the opposite. It's the mentee, the person that you are having this relationship with, who's in charge of these interactions. It really creates a very interesting power dynamic because you're the one with the information to share, but it's up to the other person to guide the conversation and to pull from you the information that they're looking for. Now, some people are a little bit more extroverted about getting that information out of you, and some people are a little bit more introverted, and we'll talk a little bit about how to deal with both of those situations. So the first thing I want you to do, even before you sign up for a MELI or a collective mentorship, even before you agree to be part of one as part of a professional organization or your corporation, I want you to really think about why. Why would you like to mentor? I know that I am constantly engaged in mentoring relationships, and for me, it's very important twofold. The first is because of my background in human resources, I like to be able to help people who are thinking about making career choices. But also when I started my business, when I was an entrepreneur, so many people stepped up and spent time with me and gave me information and gave me insider hips. Now I have my own hips, insider tips, and were able to help me to ask questions that I didn't even know that I was supposed to ask. When I was starting my business, I was so green that it did not even occur to me that I needed to have insurance for my business. So I was talking to my mentor, who's been my mentor for 24 and a half years now, and she was the one that said, not only do you need to make sure that you have insurance, but here are 2 agents that I recommend that you call. When you call them, make sure that they know that I sent you. So think about, what is in it for you? Why is being a mentor important for you? For me, it's to help to guide people. I enjoy helping to guide people. And on the same side, it's because so many people were so good about helping me. So have an answer, know why you want to mentor. Then think about what it is that you can help. What are things that you are really good at? What are things that you struggled to learn, but now you can do? What are some of the experiences that you've had in your life that you want to make sure other people have, or experiences in your life that you want to make sure other people avoid? So if by sharing your information, by sharing your background, you can save someone from making a similar mistake. Once you know a little bit more about yourself, you can think about what you hope to gain. Some of these mentor-mentee relationships actually do go 2 ways. I alluded to it before, which is if you're somebody who's more established and not a digital native. If you have a mentee who's considerably younger and is more familiar with technology, they might be able to help you start learning how to tweet or go on Instagram or whatever it happens to be. So it does not have to be constantly a one-way where you're giving information to the other person. Occasionally it can be the 2-way street, and the other person is also helping to give information to you. And then the bottom line is, be realistic. Know what time you have to give. It's important that you're able to commit to this person. So not only the time that you have to give on a weekly or monthly basis, but how long? For a 3-month period of time, for a 6-month period of time, for a year. Really think about what the amount of time that you're willing to share, because being a mentor well means that you need to use that time effectively and efficiently. So then I want you to get to know the mentee. What are some of the things that you want to know about the mentee? You want to find out more about their background, because you, as the experienced person, can then see where there are opportunities for growth. I'm actually working with 4 mentees this summer. We're doing a 6-week summer program. And I noticed immediately that one of the young women did not take the opportunity to speak up during our meetings. And if I was speaking with her, and when I do speak with her one-on-one, and I said, where would you like to grow this summer? Self-advocating was not on the list. But because I'm old, or let's change that, because I'm experienced, I know that she needs to be able to self-advocate by the time she gets into the work world. And so for this summer, one of the things that I'm making sure that she's doing is speaking up more during the meetings. She has something positive to contribute, and my goal this summer is to make sure that she finds her voice. At the same time, I want to find out what they want to learn from me. There should be some specific, measurable, objective goals that you are able to come up with them, and be able to say, yes, I can teach you that. I may be able to teach you part of that, or no, that's not something I'm going to be able to teach you. So find out what they want out of this relationship. You want to think about what the options are, and then your job as the mentor is to guide the mentee. The reason I have this picture of the shoe tying is because you see very often with parents of young children, especially if they have more than one child, parents of young children are constantly trying to rush you out the door. And those Velcro shoes are obviously a godsend, but they don't actually help in the long run. And even when they transition from the Velcro shoes into the shoes with the laces, it's so important for the parent or the parental unit not to tie the laces for the child. Even if it means you have to add an extra 15 minutes into your morning to get the child to be able to tie their shoelaces themselves, that's the important thing. As a mentor, you want to make sure that your mentee is not going off to 4th grade with you needing to tie their shoes. Your job is to guide them so that they can tie the shoes themselves. So how are you going to begin? Remember, I talked about the dance. It's really up to the mentee. The mentee should be the one reaching out to you to schedule the meeting. Now, I know I'm telling you that it has to be the mentee who's leading. They're the one driving the mentor car. You need to be responsive to them, but we also know that you're the mentor. So the mentee should be reaching out to you to schedule the meeting. If after a week and a half, the mentee has not reached out to you, then you need to give them a little bit of a touch and send them an email saying, I'm so glad that we've been matched. Please let me know when you would like to meet. So again, we're waiting for the mentee to make the first move. We're waiting for the mentee to lead the conversation. But if they're not doing it, then you need to guide them to do it. You want to be able to offer suggestions. They should be coming to the meeting with a list of questions for you. Allow them to ask you the questions. Remember, they're leading the interaction. You're along for the ride. But make sure before the meeting ends that you talk about next steps. Instead of me saying, well, the next steps are you need to schedule a meeting for next Monday at 1 o'clock. I will say to the mentee, all right, when do you think we should meet again? Or even more obtusely, what do you think our next steps should be? Remember, the whole idea behind this mentor-mentee relationship is that we are teaching them how to do things, including how to run meetings, how to have interactions, not telling them exactly what they should be doing. So if they come to the meeting and they really don't have a lot of questions for you, that's your opportunity to learn more about them. And you want to ask as many open-ended questions as possible. So these are some of the obvious. You can obviously go to Google or Bing and ask them questions to ask in a mentor interview. And I'm sure 1,001 questions will pop up. these are ones that I have chosen because I find that these give me the information that I want at the beginning of the relationship. So I usually like to ask them to tell me about themselves. I'll ask them what they do for fun, because usually, especially if it's a business mentee, they tend to want to tell you about the grades that they had in school and the internships that they have and what job they're working now, which is all well and good, but I still want to know what they do in their downtime. I want to know why they were seeking out a mentor, what they hope to gain from a mentoring relationship. I will specifically ask, even though I think I know what a mentee should be getting from me, I ask them, how can I be of most use to you? And sometimes they know, and that's wonderful, because then I can make sure to tailor my answers and to tailor our interactions into something that's going to be useful. And other times, especially if it's a young alumni, someone who's just starting out in their career, they don't even know what questions to ask. But I do like to ask, how can I be most useful to you? I will ask how they communicate. I love to communicate face-to-face. When we are done with this pandemic, I will be ODing on face-to-face interactions. But now we are constrained by what's going on in the world. So some people like the video conference, other people prefer the telephone. In fact, one of the client groups that I'm working with right now, they were having a really terrible time, not with mentoring relationships, but with their Zoom meetings. And so what we decided to try was they were going to start doing their staff meetings. They were starting with video on Zoom, and everybody said hi and did a little bit of a small talk. And then once they got to the main part of the agenda, everyone turned off their videos, and they found that they were much more effective that way. So ask, what is the best way for us to communicate? Maybe the first one or two is a video conference so that you get to see the person, but then after that you do walk-in talks where you both decide to take a walk at the same time and you talk on the phone while you're walking, which gives you the added benefit of a little bit of exercise as well as interacting with your mentee. So really talk specifically about the communication. Ask how often and when, instead of you telling them. As somebody who builds mentor-mentee programs, I find that the ideal for most business professionals is to have a video every other week. Every week tends to be a little bit too much if it's going to be a longer duration, if it's going to be 6 months to a year. So every other week to meet, schedule for an hour. Usually people tend to finish around 45 minutes, 50 minutes into the hour, and you get a little bonus of some time at the end, along with email check-ins in between the videos. Now, I know this, and most of you probably know this because you've done this before. But again, part of being a mentor is allowing the teachable moments. So ask the mentee how often they'd like to communicate and what they think they should try. And I encourage you to try it and then allow for editing or to change things as they go along. And then the question I like to end any interview, any interaction, any introductory conversation with is there something else I should know about you that I haven't asked you yet? And sometimes you get some really interesting information. So I encourage you to include this question as part of your introductory meeting. What else should I be asking you that we haven't discussed? Is there anything else that you feel it's important that I know about you? And people really at this point, especially because it's at the end of the interaction, tend to be more open and will share with you things that they might not have shared at the beginning of the conversation. I found out all sorts of interesting things about people's upbringing, about their backgrounds. Occasionally people will talk about a hidden disability. This is the time that that information is going to be transmitted to you. You want to make sure that when you're sharing information, that when you're teaching, that you're doing it in a way that this mentee can hear you. I'm a big fan of telling stories. Use specific examples. So if they ask you about, they went for a job interview and they answered a question during the job interview all the way wrong. Instead of telling them, just don't worry about it, talk to them about, well, would you like to do something to fix this? Would you like to try to change this situation? And the example, the story that I like to tell is of somebody who we had a job interview, and they did, they gave an answer that was okay during the interview, but then afterwards, I received this amazing thank you note. So they thanked us for the time. They explained that they're very interested in the job. They explained why their skills would be very appropriate for this particular job. And then in the thank you note, they wrote, on the way home, I realized that I answered that question completely wrong. And if there was a way to rewind and answer that question again, here's how I would answer the question. And because of that thank you note, that person actually made it through to the next round of interviews. And by using that story, I'm illustrating a number of things. Number one, as an etiquette consultant, I like thank you notes, but also I'm telling people that just because an interaction is over doesn't mean that it's, that just because an interaction finished doesn't mean it's completely over. And that by being diplomatic and by being polite, you can reopen a negotiation, you can reopen a relationship, you can reopen an interview. So as your mentee is asking you for advice, instead of just telling them, always put all of your money in bonds, use a story. Find ways to tell stories, because that's going to be much more memorable for them in the long run. As you are mentoring, I encourage you to be a detective. When I'm doing human resources, when you're doing investigative interviews, as people are describing what happened, we are told to ask the 3 whys. Why did you do that? And they give us a reason. And then we say, can you explain that a little bit more? And then at the end I say, why did you make sure that it happened that way? By asking good questions, by digging deeper, you're going to get a lot more information about this person. So I want you to be able to have your mentor hat on, but also have a little bit of a detective hat on, trying to figure out what makes this person tick. What's important to this person? Somebody might be coming to you because you are an accountant and they are taking accounting and they've done an internship in accounting and they got a job being a bookkeeper straight out of school. And now they want to talk to you because they want to be mentored in accounting. But as you talk to them, they start talking about how they don't necessarily really like accounting. And it was really their parents who wanted them to be accountants. If you ask good questions, you can really get to the heart of the matter. This person came to you and you thought it was because you were going to be mentoring them on how to be an accountant, but it turns out that you're going to be mentoring them about finding their calling and being able to tell their parents that they don't want to be accountants. So by asking really good questions and by digging down deeper, you're able to actually really help that mentee be the person that they're supposed to become. You want to reaffirm your goals. So as you are meeting, by the 2nd or 3rd meeting, you should have some written goals from the mentee about what they want to gain from the relationship. When you are meeting on a regular basis, you should have those goals in the email reminder that you're having the meeting. Keep those at the forefront to make sure that you're tailoring those conversations, that you're tailoring the information towards those shared goals. And then as a mentor, no matter whether the mentee asks you or not, you should be helping to facilitate connections. Again, this is not helping them land $1 million client. This is helping to guide them about where they should be spending their time, the people they should be reaching out to. You are not doing it for them. You are helping them so that they can do it themselves. I do want you to check in both with your mentee, but also first with yourself. Is this mentoring relationship working? What am I doing well? When do I find the mentee opening up to me, or when do I see them shutting down? How can I make sure that the mentee can hear the information that I'm trying to share with them? And then you also want to check in with the mentee. Am I helping you? Is this amount of communication good? Would you like to speak with me more often, less often, more by video, less by video? Check in at a periodic basis. Make sure that there's a time, especially if you have a mentee who's a little more introverted, that they feel comfortable being able to give you feedback on how the mentor-mentee relationship is going. And then obviously if something's not going well, adjust, try something new. If something isn't working, try something different and find something hopefully that will work for both of you. Final tips, it can be really difficult, both as a parental unit and as a mentor, to be able to listen to somebody without judging them. One of the best gifts that you can give your mentee is to really listen and to ask questions and make sure they feel like they're being heard. Your job is not to solve any problems for them, but to help them and guide them to solving the problems themselves. As a mentor, as somebody who's been out in the work world now for 3 decades, it's refreshing and important for me to hear my mentee's point of view. Where are they coming from? What's important to them as they're building their careers? It's good for me to be able to look at things from different points of view. And in fact, one of the mentees I had a meeting with on Monday, and he and I had outlined his project, and we were getting ready to move forward. And he said, you know, I was thinking about this project and I have a completely different way of doing this. Would it be okay if we tried it this way? And it was a way that I had not even considered. He had a completely fresh perspective and a completely different point of view. And for me as the mentor, it would have been really easy for me to say, I'm in charge here, I'm the mentor, you have to do the project my way. But I was able to listen and to see it from his point of view and to say, sure, yeah, let's try it your way. Spend the next week devoted to doing it this way. It sounds like a great idea. And let's check back in. And when we check back in on Monday, you can tell me whether you think it's working or not. So considering the other people's point of view is one of the ways that you can also help to grow. And remember that feedback, kind feedback, is important to them. So if they are not speaking up enough, or if they're talking too much, or if they're asking questions that are too personal, or if they're dressed in a way that would not be appropriate in the office setting, give them that feedback in a kind way, but you're the person they can hear that from, as opposed to going into an interview or a big client meeting and doing something that's inappropriate because nobody had shared an essential piece of feedback with them. And with that, we're up to our questions and answers. Michelle will be reading off the questions for me. I do hope that you're able to stay and to learn from each other and from each other's questions.
Great. That was wonderful, Jody. So much information there for everybody. Our first question says, could you talk a little bit more about how a mentor might work with a mentee if they feel like they have nothing in common? And they give the example of they were paired with an Eastman School of Music, say, and they don't have a background in music at all.
All right, so I'm actually going to divide that question into 2 answers.
Okay.
And they can take what they want from both of the answers. So the first thing is if they feel like they have nothing in common with their mentee. And I actually love this as a question because in my networking workshops, when I go to big conferences, I talk to people about how they're networking. And one of the faux pas that I see over and over again, even from people who have been in the work world for many, many years, is they'll walk into a grand ballroom, they'll look at all of the people, and subconsciously, they're not actually even aware that they're doing it, is they will walk over to someone who is similar to them. Men tend to talk to men, women tend to talk to women, tall people talk to tall people, shorter people talk to shorter people. People who wear glasses tend to go to somebody else who wears glasses. We tend to be attracted to people who are like us. So when I do workshops and at big conferences and conventions, one of the things I do is I pair people up around the room and I ask them to spend the next 20 would be way too long, the next 2 minutes finding out all the ways that they're different. And people will say, I wear glasses, they don't wear glasses. I'm from Boston, she's from Rochester. My hair is straight, her hair is curly. I'm married, she's not married. I like cats, she likes dogs. They go through and they can quickly, in those 2 minutes, find all of the ways that they're different. And then in the Socratic method that you're supposed to use when you're a mentor, I then ask those same pairs to spend the next 2 minutes finding all the things they have in common. And what's amazing, and I've been using this same exercise many years, many different industries, many different places across the country and into Canada, is that never fail. The list of things that people have in common is always longer than the things that they have that are different. So if on the face of things, when you're looking at the initial backgrounds of the mentor and the mentee, if it seems like you don't have a lot in common, use a version of this exercise. During one of those introductory meetings, spend 2 minutes, and you can blame me. I saw this etiquette consultant, she told me we should use this as a mentor-mentee exercise, and spend 2 minutes on the clock of all the things that you have that are different. Then take a breath and put another 2 minutes on the clock and come up with all the things that you have that are the same. And you will see that as human beings, we're more alike than we are different. Which is a great way for you to connect with your mentor and mentee. When I go to networking events, I make it a challenge that when I walk into the room, I look around the room and I actually look for the person who seems most different from me. And that's the first person I'm going to approach. People who look like me or sound like me or talk like me, I already have them in my network. When I go to a networking event, when I go to a conference, I'm looking to expand my network. And by actively looking for someone who seems as different from me as possible, that's going to be the best way for me to expand my network. So that was part A. And then the part B was about Eastman. And I'm actually really glad that you bring up Eastman because I am not musical. In fact, when I was at the University of Rochester, my roommate was an art history major on the River campus and an opera major at the Eastman School of Music. And she would not let me sing in our room because if I sang in her room, I was so tone deaf that I would actually set her off. But when I work with people who come from artistic backgrounds, one of the best mentors they can actually have is somebody who's in the business world. They are usually so good at their craft. And when I talk about artistic, this can also mean people like cabinet makers, boat builders, people who are used to creating things. They don't always have the same interests in doing some of the back-end office things. So you, as a mentor with a business background, can actually help them to provide them some guidance on how to interact with customers or clients, how to do some marketing, maybe some recommendations on how to do keeping some of their books. So you are able to fill in knowledge gaps that someone who is more in the artistic field does not have. So I encourage you to embrace having a mentee who is very different from you, because the more different you are, chances are the more knowledge that you have that will be valuable to this person in some way, shape, or form.
That's great. Thank you, Jody. The next question, do you have any advice for working with someone who isn't self-motivated? I tend to mentor from the approach of guiding someone with their own goals, but I'm currently working with someone who seems to want me to set all their goals and deadlines for them, but then misses the deadlines we agreed to. She asks to meet, but then doesn't actually lead the meeting. That's a good one.
So the first question I would have is the next time I actually got to meet with this person, next time they actually showed up, I would say, Michelle, I actually want to take a step back because I feel like this mentoring relationship isn't taking off the way that it should. And I want to check in with you about why you wanted to have a mentor. And once I find out why they wanted to have a mentor, I will ask, am I a good mentor for you? You're not going to hurt my feelings. If I'm not the right person for you, then let's figure out and get you the right person. So I find that overall, that if it's not clicking, there's a reason. Maybe this person is the person whose parents wanted them to be an accountant who really wants to be a hairdresser. So do the pause. Yeah, I'm going to scroll back. This one, the check-in. I want you to circle back and do a check-in, because if the relationship isn't really taking off and this person is not putting any effort into it, there's a reason why. And you want to get down to what the reason why is. I don't want you as a mentor to be wasting your time with somebody who is not interested in having that relationship with you. So ask the questions. Ask them why they wanted a mentor, and then ask why it does not seem to be gelling with you. And listen without judgment, and see if you can ask the 3 whys. So ask them why 3 different ways, 3 different times, and see if you can get to what's going on. If that mentoring relationship is part of a corporation or a professional organization or through the Melior Collective, this is the time to reach out to whoever's coordinating the program and find out what's going on. But you should not be, you can lead the person, but you should not be dragging the person through a mentoring relationship.
Okay, thanks for that. The next one is, can you mentor someone who is older than you are? So this one comes up quite a bit from people, I've noticed, from people who sometimes think that they need somebody who has either more experience or that they are actually older than they are to be their mentor. And so how could you demonstrate your worth to somebody, you know, who is older as your mentee?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe that mentorship, who the mentee and who the mentor is not a function of age. It's a function of what you want to learn. So I could be the mentee with somebody who's teaching me how to use Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I'm not good at Instagram. I'm older. If I'm going to look for someone who's going to teach me how to do Instagram, I'm going to actively look for someone who is significantly younger than I am. I am not interested in age when looking at the mentoring relationship. When I'm looking at the mentoring relationship, I'm looking at knowledge and experience. And it does not matter what my age is. It does not matter what their age is. I've had mentors who are older, mentors who are the same age, and mentors who are younger than I am. It's all about what you want to learn.
Perfect. And also I wanted just to mention that for our program that we'll be launching in the fall, that alumni can also be mentees. So it's not just students that can be mentees. So alumni can be mentors or mentees in our program. The next one is, if you can't provide the information the mentee is requesting, how do you feel about introducing the mentee to somebody else?
Absolutely. So there will be times that that's a great idea. There will be times that I have a mentee and they ask a specific question. So they don't need a whole different mentor. They just need to have a little field trip. And I am thrilled, especially if I have somebody in my contacts that I can refer them to. I always make sure before I give somebody's name out. So I will send an email or I will call the person. My mentee that I've gotten through the University of Rochester is very interested in human resources, but they also thought they might want to find out more about event planning. Would you be willing to spend time doing an informational interview with this person on event planning? And then once I get the yes, I'm happy to do that, then I will provide an e-introduction. I will never give out somebody's name and contact information without checking with them first. But as a mentor, part of my role is to help facilitate those, is to help make sure that this person, if I can't provide the information, that if I have somebody who can provide the information, I'll introduce them. Or if I don't have somebody in my database, I will work with the mentee. Okay, I don't know somebody who does that. Where do you think we could look? Where would be our first stop? And of course, the University of Rochester, the Melior Collective would be their first stop for thousands of potential people who have already signed up to help fellow alumni. So I'd be able to send them there as well.
Thanks. So there's a question here that says, can you explain the difference between mentorship and an internship? And how can you make sure the mentorship doesn't dissolve into unpaid employment?
All right, so this is a very good question. It varies. There are federal regulations about internships, which you can Google. There are also state regulations about this. If possible, internships nowadays should be paid, because what happens is it becomes a privilege opportunity that students who come from wealthier backgrounds are able to engage in unpaid internships, and students from more modest means don't have that same opportunity because they have to find a summer job that pays. So that would be my first comment, is that whenever possible, any internship that's over 10 hours a week should absolutely be paid in some way, shape, or form, so that that person's getting a compensation. It's up to the mentor not to take advantage of the situation. If you are getting directed work that benefits that corporation, chances are that should actually be a paid internship as opposed to a mentoring relationship. Mentoring is really about guiding, not about giving work to people. Does that help?
Yes, I think that's a very good distinction. There's also another question: should there be a fee for mentoring?
The mentor should not be charging the mentees fees. There are other ways to do things like that, where there are official programs. So let's say I was an electrician, and in order to become a registered electrician, the mentee actually needs to come with me on job sites for so many hours. So there are some professions where this is built in, and the payment structures and the legal obligations are already built in. I would be very concerned about anyone telling mentees, I will mentor you, but you have to pay me. That sets off a lot of alarm bells in my head. I would have to know more about the specific situation, but that would be very, very concerning to me.
Okay, thank you. Here's a very good question. So because of COVID, there are many people who have either lost their jobs or are currently not working. How do you feel about being a mentor if you are currently unemployed or even retired?
Absolutely. Just because you're unemployed or retired doesn't mean that you've stopped knowing the things that you're an expert in. So by all means, in fact, right now, while you're in between jobs, this actually might be the ideal time to mentor someone else, because you have the time to do it. And retired mentors are a great resource. And in fact, there's an organization through the Small Business Administration called SCORE, SCORE, and the last two letters are retired executives. And so people who are interested in starting a new business can actually get a mentor through SCORE to help them start their business. So just because you are not currently actively in the work world at this exact moment, you still have that information, you still have the knowledge, and this is a great time for you to be able to keep busy and share that information with someone who could really use it.
I would say the same thing for the situation for a mentee. Because a lot of people are also looking for, work as mentees. And so I'm hoping that people will realize that signing up in the fall for this program, it also helps you it can help you to solidify, what kind of career you want if you're undecided or if you're a student. There's a lot of reasons why being part of the program will really help you in your professional development. This question, can these slides be shared? And if so, should we email you directly? So I can answer that one. The slides and the programs will all be shared in our follow-up email for everyone. And we will actually put both presentations on the same email so that everybody has the benefit of listening to the mentee webinar and the mentor webinar. So my next question is, what if I find the mentee's goals to be unrealistic? How do you give advice with honesty without crushing dreams and with their spirits?
Yeah, so first I want to go back to the other question.
Oh, yeah.
people,
Yeah.
I know you're going to be sharing these slides, but this is what I do professionally. So if your organization, if your group is thinking about starting a mentoring program, please contact me. I'm happy to share my intellectual property with you appropriately. Then the second part is sometimes students or mentees, not every mentee is a student, have really big dreams. And your job is never to crush their dreams, because you need to be able to listen without judgment. And what I would encourage you to do, because sometimes mentees are thinking so big, is to narrow down to a tiny little, what is the first step? So you want to do this, you want to do X. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. What is the first thing we need to work on? And then I, as the mentor, am going to work with them on that first little step. And I might be able to help them with the first 10 steps or the first 100 steps. And then they might need to find a different mentor because their dream is bigger than I can help them with. But yeah, don't crush anybody's dreams, especially because you never know. There's so many people, from Walt Disney to Oprah to the guy who invented Starbucks, he didn't invent coffee, who invented selling Starbucks. All of these people, when they started talking about what their dream was, they had hundreds of people telling them no. Your job as the mentor is never to tell somebody no. What you want to do is take that really big dream and think about what are the first 1 or 2 steps and work with your mentee on that. Get them started. Your job isn't to make sure that they succeed or to crush them so that they never try. Your job is to get them positioned so they can take the first few steps.
Great. We have about 3 more minutes, but I do have a question for you regarding, so our program is based on obviously the profiles that we have in the Meliora Collective, which is similar to LinkedIn. And my question to you, Jody, is what would you include in your profile that would allow you to be seen as, the best mentor out there? I mean, what kinds of information would you put in your profile to make it absolutely as complete as possible?
So what I would I'm actually glad that you asked this question, because I was thinking about this during our conversation earlier, right before we got on the call, which is I want people to think, let me slide back to see if I can find it easily, to know yourself. As a mentor, when you're filling out your Meliora Collective profile, I want you to really think about what it is that you can share. So for example, I've authored 3 books, but I don't know if I would really be a good mentor on how to write a book. But what I could be a good mentor on is how to find a book agent. So in my profile, I will include that I'm the author of 3 books, and I will include happy to help provide information on what to look for in a literary agent. So think about, what are the things, think about what skills, what discrete skills that you have that you can literally put in little buckets and be able to share with somebody else. And that's what you should be putting up and including on your Meliora Collective profile.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the group? I see that you have your email. Jody is also one of our alumni career coaches, so you can also find her on our career coaches page. And I know she's also on the collective.
Yes.
Is there anything else that you can think of that might be helpful to potential mentors out there, or people who are mentors currently?
Well, I think that my last piece of advice is that I really have taken to heart over the years the idea of Meliora, of being ever better. And being a mentor and is one of the ways that I can help out in the world for other people to be ever better. And by being a mentee, I'm still, just because I left campus doesn't mean I've stopped learning. And it's a way for me to make sure that I am constantly improving myself. So that's what I would leave everyone with.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time today. And I think it was very well received by everybody who has stayed with us. Also, just for people who are not part of the collective yet, you can join by going to thecollective.rochester.edu. I will also include it in the email that I send out to everyone. You cannot sign up for mentorship yet, but you will be seeing announcements of it starting in the fall once we get up and running. So keep an eye out for it. And everybody is saying thank you to you, Jody. So thank you again for your time, and we look forward to the next time that you're with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, take care.